Hello. I wanted to give you a quick overview about this commentary script that I've assigned for you to do. It's important to keep in mind that there are some different parameters that I'm using to evaluate the quality of the script. And the assignment goes back to one of the original things I wanted to emphasize with you, and that is I view you as producers. You, either as an editor or as a camera person, cinematographer, however you want to look at it, are a contributor to the overall storytelling that's going on in a project. And I would like you to be really comfortable and competent on all levels, understanding how to write well for media, understanding how to pay attention to the audio aspects, understanding the storytelling, and how to improve the production. And so this particular aspect of the course is focusing on the aspects of writing that are really important to quality uh, production for media. And so I have a couple of parameters here I want to highlight so I can describe in a little more depth so you understand how I'm going to be evaluating the script. And in the same time, highlight some of the important aspects of writing for media that I think we should all try to embody as much as possible. So let's go ahead. We're going to skip over here and take a look at what's going on with the PowerPoint. And you can see that I'm asking for a 2 to 3 minute commentary. Uh, People often ask, well, how long is that? How many pages is that? And the truth is, it's no more than 2 pages double spaced. Okay, we're talking about 750 words, 500 to 750 words. It's not a long piece, right? Always keep it short, keep it concise. And I'm interested in having you focus on these ideas: organization of your story ideas, the narrative cohesion which goes along with that organization, and the clarity of your storytelling. These are really important aspects of writing on all levels. It doesn't have to be just for media, but it's particularly important for media because we want somebody to understand what it is we're saying to them the first time they hear it. We don't want them to have to go back and review and double check and whatnot and stop and think about it. We want them to just take it in, understand it, and move along and follow us really easily. So having good organization, good cohesion, and good clarity will contribute to that greatly. I'll give you more details on all of these. Second one is the simple conversational language. We're always looking for it to be sounding like you're telling somebody a story. You're going to be doing it more concisely and more effectively because you've written it down. You've thought through what you're going to say. But you want it to sound as though it's very conversational, that you're just talking with somebody. We will look at grammar, of course, that's pretty important, but of course, we'll take into consideration that sometimes you're going to write the way people speak and quote people in essence, or write sentences that they might say, and those might include some changes to traditional grammar, and that's going to be fine. I want to get an emphasis on focus as well. You don't have a lot of time. 2 to 3 minutes is not a lot of time to tell a story. 2 pages, a page and a half, is not a lot of space in which to tell a story. So you really have to be focused on what your goal is with this particular story. And then the last thing I want to emphasize is the idea of authentic voice. We want the story to sound like it's coming from you. When our audiences are listening to us, they want to feel as though they're experiencing something that's different from them, really. That's something they haven't experienced themselves. And frequently, you may have experienced the same things as many of your audience members, but the way you tell it, the kinds of details you provide, will make it feel as though it's something unique and special and give them more reason to be interested and motivated to listen. So those are the main points that I want to emphasize, and here's a little more detail on each. The first thing is authentic voice. Authentic voice is really all about the detail. We all, in terms of a story like this, we've all gone to high school, right? Your audience most assuredly went to some kind of high school, right? So you don't have to give us all the details about what a high school is like. You can give us a few details about your high school experience, a few details maybe about the structure, about the place that you're in, or whatever it might be, that will help us then draw from our own memories and we'll draw from those memories and populate your story with our ideas, right? And that can make it really believable and interesting to them. And then you include a few things that just make it more unique. Like, just what are the aspects of that experience that are a little bit different? We're describing people that you know that might be in the story. I give a couple of cues that allow us to then put a little more detail around the character, and that way then we can start to really envision that individual. So true experiences are presented in a believable way so that the audience can identify with. Too much detail is just that, too much. Few carefully placed bits of detail can make a huge difference in how the story is perceived by an audience. Narrative cohesion is really about how well the story is progressing from sentence to sentence. Are you taking people and giving them information that leads to the next idea, that leads to the next idea? And so how that story is being told and unfolding for the audience is what this narrative cohesion is about. Think about it even from the level of a sentence-to-sentence progression. You don't want to have a lot of redundancy. We don't have time for that with our audiences. They've got a lot of other things they could be doing. So we don't want them to feel as though, oh yeah, I got it, and then like look for something else to listen to or watch. We want to give them details and move them along and respect their time. So this natural flow of ideas is going to be what helps draw them in and keep them with you from beginning to end. Active voice is a particularly important aspect. You may have had RTV 2100. Hopefully they emphasize this idea of active voice. We really put it in our writing for electronic media pretty heavily. We rely on it quite a bit. And the basic idea is that our sentence structures have subject, featured, then verb. That is, somebody's doing something. And that kind of structure makes it easy for an audience to follow what's going on, and it makes the sentence easier to say, to read aloud, etc. Here are some examples of ideas. So sometimes people get confused. They think that active voice is one thing and passive voice is the other, and we can't do passive voice ever. No, that's not true. We can do passive voice. Passive voice is when the subject of the sentence is the receiver of the action. So the idea is that when you're using passive voice, we're not really focusing on who did what. We're focusing on what happened to somebody, okay? So that's important to keep in mind, and that's different from talking about past tense. Past tense is important. We will need that frequently in certainly a recollection like this. Active voice is when we want the subject, the person, say like me, Dr. Canali recorded the video. That's active voice. Dr. Canali recorded it poorly. That's active voice. Still, it's very succinct, to the point. If we're talking about it in passive voice, it would be, the video was recorded by Dr. Canali. The video was recorded very poorly by Dr. Canali. That's a little more difficult to follow. It's putting the person who's doing it kind of behind as an afterthought. And that can be really good in public relations when you want to try to keep your company from being the focal point of something bad that happened. But when we're talking about telling stories, we want to talk about what people did, how they approach things. And so we use subject, then verb. Okay, this is a quick couple of examples, right? The waiter dropped the tray of food as opposed to the tray of food was dropped by the waiter. Again, the I'll highlight here is that the waiter dropped the tray of food is short, succinct. The other one takes a little more, a few more words, takes a little more time, and perhaps may be a little more difficult for your audience to keep in mind if you're telling a more complicated story. How about this one? Review committee denied the request for funding. The request for funding has been denied by the review committee. Again, you can see how we're lengthening the sentence and we're hiding the actor, and so it makes it a little more difficult for an audience to follow. Again, not if it's just one sentence, but if you're telling a full story, sometimes it can be harder to follow. So those are the key things I'd like to highlight for you and make sure that you're paying attention to in the process of doing your commentary. Again, this is something that's low risk. You're going to be recording this eventually, and then we're going to be adding some sound to it. So you could be thinking about sound elements that you might want to include later on. But right now we're just focused on telling the story, one voice. There's no format that's needed here because right now we're just talking about one voice and you're the one who's going to be reading it. So it doesn't even have to be presented in a manner for somebody else. And focus on those elements and we'll be in good shape. Of course, you can always ask questions, send a message, email, through web courses, etc. if you'd like to get more information about it. Good luck working on this commentary. Sounds like it's an easy thing to do in the beginning, but it's actually a lot more challenging than it sounds.